Hey, good morning, guys, and we are live. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Money Talk Show with, you guessed it, your favorite financial advisor, Christopher Beecher. Now, first up, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the persons who have subscribed to the channel thus far, who have liked and who have shared it. Really appreciate that. Continue to press the thumbs up button to like the video. It really does wonders. And for all of you financial mutants out there who have been enjoying the content, share it with somebody. Just share it with somebody now. So, as I promised, this is part 2 of credit cards. Now, one of our subscribers, Mr. John Michael, you know who you are, was asking about the credit card, if credit cards are emergencies. Right. So, he was told that credit cards should be used only for emergencies. So, let's break that down, because here on the Money Talk Show, we talk about popular things concerning money or ideas in an unpopular way. And so I want to say, John Michael, no, credit cards are not for emergencies. The mere fact that you have to use your credit card, that means you are in an emergency because you have no emergency fund. So let's break it down. Credit cards are not for emergency. What you really need to do is to build up an emergency fund and do so very quickly. All right. So what is an emergency fund? Grandma used to say emergency funds are for rainy days. And in today's world, we say, what if happens? You know what I'm talking about? So here's the thing. Your savings account is going to be different from your emergency fund account. Your emergency fund account is only to be touched, you got it, when there is an emergency. Your regular savings is there as part of your budget, right? And when we talk about budget, we say every dollar has a job. Every dollar has an assignment. So if there is something that comes up outside of the budget, that is an emergency. That's when you use your emergency fund and not your credit card. All right, so your emergency fund is really this, right? It's something that you want to build up really quickly. I would say emergency fund needs to be at about 100 grand or 150 grand based on the cost of living in Jamaica right now and what things really cost. In Jamaica, most emergencies that we have, whether it's a medical bill, whether it's something with our car, something with our children, something we need as an emergency to buy for the house, if something breaks, can be covered by 100 or 150 grand. So what I really want you guys to focus on is stop the saving, set aside in a separate account, set aside in a separate place or space, money you do not touch, break only for emergencies, to save up $100,000 to $150,000 as fast as you can, right? So that means that I want you to focus on saving up your emergency fund within a matter of 3 months to 6 months, depending on how much income you actually make, right? To set aside that 100 grand or that 150 grand to know that you have a safety net just in case some should happen to you or your family. All right. So what I want you guys to focus on is the fact that emergency fund is there only for emergencies. Your credit card should not be used for emergencies because that's why you need to have an emergency fund. If you have to use your credit card for an emergency, that means you're flat out broke and you never had any backup, i.e. an emergency fund in the first place. All right, good. So set aside a separate account for your emergency fund, as I said before, or put it in a separate place. Now, ideally, your emergency fund startup is 100 to 150K. But as you get better at budgeting, which we're going to cover next week on our vacation series of the Money Talk Show, and as you get better with saving money, your emergency fund should actually expand to be 3 to 6 full months salary. Yeah, you got it. Why 3 to 6 months full salary? Well, what would happen if you were to lose your job? In most cases, most persons' primary source of income. What if you were the breadwinner for the family, right? In most cases, typically it takes 3 missing payments, right? For the bank to start calling you to say, hey, I missed my car payment. Or it takes 3 mortgage payments for the bank to pick up the phone and say, hey, buddy, what's going on? You see what I'm saying? So we say 3 months in the back is the safety net. But 3 to 6 months, now we're at the 6 months part, because typically if you have lost your primary source of income, between the time when it goes out to sending resumes, doing interviews, actually taking care of your living expenses during the time that you're still actively seeking or sourcing a job, it could take up to 6 months before you actually get a new job. And in the meantime, your picnic them need to eat. You need to eat. Your car gonna need gas. You need to buy toiletries. You have to be taking care of the 4 walls, right? We're talking about transportation. We're talking about food. We're talking about your expenses like your light bill and your water bill, and generally just taking care of your needs, your family. So that's why 6 months emergency fund is really recommended. No, there are always exceptions to the rule. If you are currently an employed person, 3 to 6 months is fine. But if you are the breadwinner for the family, or if you are self-employed in the sense, or a small business owner, primarily means that you or your talent is the main way that you get an ingathering, meaning that you have to go to work to get paid. You might be a lawyer, you might be a doctor, a professional, a skilled workman, a carpenter, right? Who does nice cabinetry. But unless you actually go out and do the job, even though you have a high income, it depends on you being there. For self-employed persons, you need to have an emergency fund of up to a year salary, a full year, because you are already in control of your destiny. Basically, your profession or your vocation is what you do, and you're skilled in doing so. But what happens if you get sick and you literally can't go out to work, right? Not only can't you go to work to earn in those times, but what about your medical expenses? Because we spoke about food, transportation, and we also spoke about utilities, right? And of course, we're talking about your rent or your mortgage in the 4 walls. But if you are sick as a self-employed person, you're not only covering those, but you have a new expense now, which are medical expenses. So for those persons who are, professionals or self-employed, you have your own practice or your own small business, you are the ones who definitely need up to 1 year's salary stored up as an emergency fund, which again is different from your savings account. Good. So what that essentially means is that if you are earning $100,000 a month as a self-employed person, your startup emergency fund, you're going to start off saving up 100 grand as a startup emergency fund. You put that aside. That's for any immediate eventualities that happen, that's like out of the blue or a rainy day. But for a crisis now, as a self-employed person, you are over time wanting to put aside $1.2 million, assuming you earn $100,000 a month, which is going to be different from your regular savings and investments account, just in case a crisis happen, you get sick and you can't work, or God forbid, one of your family members becomes direly ill and you have to really now take care of them and you have to take time off work, which has happened a lot. Which brings me to my next point. We're speaking about emergency funds. We're speaking about the fact that the credit card isn't an emergency fund, because if you get sick, one of the things that people normally do is they have to go to check themselves into the hospital or they get admitted. They start to burn up the credit card. But I mean big time. The medications are expensive. One of the highest costs you'll ever experience in life are medical expenses, should they happen to you. As a matter of fact, one of the fastest ways to empty your bank account, other than taking up the wrong partner in life, is to get sick. All right. So when we're talking about emergency funds, what you need in an emergency is not your credit card, because that's going to blow you over the brink. Because if you have no emergency fund, you're in a crisis where you're sick and you're using the credit card now, that means you are building up negative compound interest and you don't know when you're going to get back on your feet. And that is going to stand against you and it's going to cripple your financial future. Now we're winding down. In the case of a crisis, emergency fund is going to help to take care of your medical expenses should it happen to you. But also we have to talk about insurance. Guys, insurance. Better for have it and not need it than for need it and don't have it. We're talking about having a good health insurance. For some persons, their company may provide them with a health card and you can add your dependents on it, your spouse, your children, etc. And if your company is not a company that offers you group health insurance, well, you can definitely speak to a financial advisor like myself and definitely get an individual health card for yourself, because believe you me, they significantly lower the cost of medical expenses, which is among the highest medical expenses. Right now, I can tell you from personal experience, there are doctors out there, apart from doctors looking after doctors, if some doctors or persons in the medical profession were to ever have a medical emergency, they wouldn't know where to get the money from the first dollar to pay for it. They'd probably have to do this thing that we see happening all the time. And God forbid, I'm all for helping people and supporting people. But when you see somebody who becomes critically ill and they have to put out a GoFundMe, bruh, you are in a state of crisis and you're waiting on friends and family to donate money to take care of your medical expenses? Don't let that be you, guys. Get a health plan, get a health card if it's an individual card, or speak to your employer about getting you and the rest of your staff on a group health insurance. The next thing that can wipe you out, critical illness. Guys, get critical illness protection with a critical illness insurance plan. If you were ever to be diagnosed with something like cancer, or if you ever had a heart attack, and believe you me guys, I know the surgeons do not touch you unless you have minimum lump sum to pay. Heart attack is $1 million for stenting, right? Let's not go into cancer and the cost of chemotherapy and the cost of the chemotherapy drugs and just the loss of income and time from being at home. Guys, emergency fund is so important. And if you were to ever depend on a credit card in a time of crisis for this, first of all, your credit card have a limit. Even if your credit card limit is upwards of $10 million, at some point you are going to be in the deep Red Sea. And at a point, you are going to be so financially broken that even if you do recover from this, you're going to be so depressed. So guys, emergency fund, right? A health insurance plan, right? Critical illness insurance and life insurance, which we'll talk about at a later date, are all important when it comes on to dealing with emergencies and family expenses. And remember, when it comes on to emergencies or crisis, emergency fund is what we use, not our credit card. Okay, guys? If you have to use a credit card in an emergency, that means the emergency is that you do not have an emergency fund. Thank you, guys. I hope you liked this video today. We have wrapped up credit cards. If you have any questions or comments, you can always drop them in the comments. You can reach out to me directly on my Instagram. It's Christopher.Beecher625 if you want financial coaching. And of course, if you enjoyed the content today, I'm asking you to continue to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And thank you for supporting me thus far on the journey. This is your favorite financial advisor, Christopher Beecher. Peace out.